Young Pierre Bezukhov, being an illegitimate son, suddenly becomes very rich after his father's death. He was educated abroad. Life in Russian society was new and exciting to him. He is kind, awkward. He lacks artificiality. He tries to think deeply. He seeks to find the truth about life, God, existential things. Throughout the novel, we can see how life, God, gradually unravel their secrets to him. Pierre Bezukhov is a spiritual searcher, and he deserves to know this mystery. He will know what love, death, friendship, war are. His marriage to Princess Helen Kuragina was not his independent decision. He feels that this marriage will be a disaster for him. But Pierre is surrounded by the people who are really interested in this marriage and do a lot to induce him to propose to Helen. Helen Kuragina is the only female character in the novel who could be described as a negative one without any reservations. We see that Leo Tolstoy found lust the most disgusting vice in women, the vice that Helen Kuragina possessed. Being unable to disappoint other people, Pierre feels he has to propose to Helen. But there is so much insincerity and misunderstanding between him and Helen that even his words of love he pronounces in a foreign language, in French. Je vous aime, he said, remembering what has to be said at such moments. But his words sounded so weak that he felt ashamed of himself. Helen and Pierre become strangers before they can become a married couple. Helen despises her husband. She says to him, "I can speak as I like, and I tell you plainly that there are not many wives with husbands such as you who would not have taken lovers." Pierre, in his turn, being aware of his wife's infidelity, asks himself, "But in what was I to blame?" And his inner voice, his conscience, answers him, "In marrying her without loving her, in deceiving yourself and her." "Yes, I never loved her," said he to himself. "I knew she was a deprived woman," he repeated, "but dared not admit it to myself." For the first time, we see that Pierre Bezukhov, who used to be shy and weak, now is strong, courageous, and brave. He challenges Dolokhov, Helen's lover. He shoots him. Though Pierre doesn't even know how to use the pistol, he is reckless, a typical Russian trait. He can even be furious. "I'll kill you," he shouted, and seizing the marble top of the table with a strength he had never before felt, he made a step towards her, brandishing the slab. Helen's face became terrible. She shrieked and sprang aside. His father's nature showed itself in Pierre. He felt the fascination and delight of frenzy. He flung down the slab, broke it, and swooping down on her with outstretched hands, shouted, "Get out!" in such a terrible voice that the whole house heard it with horror. God knows what he would have done at that moment had Helen not fled from the room. As I have said before, Pierre is a spiritual searcher, and he can't be contented with his life until he knows its secret. Existential questions haunt his mind. What is bad? What is good? What should one love and what hate? What does one live for and what am I? What is life and what is death? What power governs it all? There was no answer to any of these questions except one, and that not a logical answer and not at all a reply to them. The answer was, "You'll die, and all will end. You'll die and know all, or cease asking." But dying was also dreadful. He meets a man, a Mason, a member of a secret society, who becomes his first spiritual parent. His name is Joseph Alexeyevich Bezukhov. Pierre meets this Mason at the most desperate moment of his life, when he is depressed. When Pierre tells Bezukhov that he doesn't believe in God, the Mason answers that there is the highest wisdom, the science explaining the whole creation and man's place in it. And we can learn this science through the light called conscience that God has implanted in our souls. Bezukhov also says to Pierre another very important thing, that God is not to be apprehended by reason, but by life. Pierre becomes a Mason. He joins the Brotherhood of the Freemasons, an esoteric spiritual society, to know the mystery of life, to cognize God. During the ceremony of initiation, Pierre feels joy. He now felt so glad to be free from his own lawlessness and submit his will to those who knew the indubitable truth. Now, Pierre Bezukhov is a Mason, and like every neophyte, he thinks that now, as he knows the truth, his soul, his life, and everything around him will change easily, and he will become happy. He doesn't know that he will experience ups and downs of his fate. He will experience disappointment and fear, and he will see that a spiritual journey is uncomfortable, painful, and hard work. God is not to be apprehended by reason, but by life. Napoleon and his army marched to Moscow. Pierre doesn't want to leave Moscow. He decides to stay there, and moreover, he decides to become the tool of retribution for Napoleon. As Pierre is a mystic, he considers Napoleon the beast, and he, Pierre, is destined to kill the beast. Pierre puts himself in all possible war events, battles, hand-in-hand fight with a French soldier, captivity, interrogations, death by firing squad that fails, fortunately, being the witness of many deaths from both sides, and finally the death of his new friend, another spiritual parent of him, Platon Karataev. He sees ordinary soldiers. He sees their simplicity, their steadiness, and their calmness. He admires them. He wants to be like them. He thinks, to be a soldier, just a soldier, to enter communal life completely, to be imbued by what makes them what they are. All these events become his fire baptism, making him more courageous, stronger, wiser. He reflects, to endure war is the most difficult subordination of man's freedom to the law of God. Man can be master of nothing while he fears death, but he who doesn't fear it possesses all. If there were no suffering, man would not know his limitations, would not know himself. The hardest thing is to be able to unite the meaning of all. He gets rid of dichotomy. He understands that life is much more complicated than people are used to perceive. That's why he can forgive his wife and feel pity for her. He's glad to hear that her lover is alive because he thought he had killed him. He can love Natasha Rostova and not condemn her for the past. At the end of the novel, we can see different Pierre, not suffering from the questions about the reasons of everything. Now he feels God in every person, every moment of life, every insignificant event, in the mundane. Now there is no need to search for God. God is everywhere. Pierre is happy and satisfied. God is here in his heart. Other people, such as his servants, his relatives, foreign prisoners, people from society, feel this great change in Pierre, and this change draws them to Pierre. There was a new feature in Pierre's relationships with all the people he now met, which gained for him the general goodwill. This was his acknowledgement of the impossibility of changing a man's convictions by words, and his recognition of the possibility of everyone thinking, feeling, and seeing things each from his own point of view. This legitimate peculiarity of each individual, which used to excite and irritate Pierre, now became a basis of the sympathy he felt for and the interest he took in other people. But it doesn't mean that Pierre is contented by current social tendencies. In his conversation with Nikolai Rostov, he expresses his indignation at reactionary trend of the government. Being a Mason, he tells Nikolai that he and other enlightened people need to found a society, maybe a secret one, a society of gentlemen in the full meaning of that word, as Pierre puts it, to assist the government in making Russia a better place, with less depravity and at the same time with more freedom and independence. Nikolai Rostov, being a military man, considers such a society of gentlemen in the full meaning of that word extremist. Readers who know Russian history well may think that Leo Tolstoy alludes to Pierre as a prospective participant of the Decembrist uprising against the Russian Emperor in 1820-25. And that uprising, although an unsuccessful one, became possible to the existence of a secret society of the Decembrists. Who knows? It's only our assumption. So Pierre Bezukhov is a spiritual searcher, a person who knows for sure that he was born not to live unconsciously, but to unveil the secret of life and to find out his own mission and his place in the universe.